Without further ado, we'll bring Andy up and get him started on options. Thank you. Yes.
Goodwin and I have been trying to catch up from spending last weekend teaching and having family that have been wanting us to do things and trying to catch up. Oh, it's down there a ways.
Oh, okay, that's 6.
There you go. It means you're almost there. All right. Got to use the mouse. Okay. So, who here knows what an option is? A few of you. Cool. Well, so an option is a unilateral right to do something. And the option that we're going to talk about is the right to purchase a piece of property at a predetermined price. That could be the difference between the mortgage and the strike value. So perhaps you could have an option that says you pay $50,000 for all of the equity above the first, but you can't do it for some time in the future. And I got to put my glasses on. Is the light on? Light's on. Hello, board people. The other mic is potted down. Pot up, mic 2.
Anyway, I'll try and speak up. So once Andy goes through the technical explanation of the option plus his examples, I'll talk about some examples where I could have done an option based on some of the activities we had from last year up until now.
Should be good.
Boy, that's tiny up there. Sorry about this, but I didn't know I was teaching this until this morning. And this is something I have in a can. So, an option's right to buy or sell something. So, an offer is at a known price, terms, conditions, and time frame. It's all set up ahead of time. An option gives an optionee these benefits. At a known risk, once you've purchased an option, your costs going forward are generally set. No use or management of the asset yet. You can capture growth, you can capture profit, you can capture amortization, and you can convert ordinary income to capital gains for those of us that have my religious convictions about taxes. Any questions? Cool. How do you get an option? You want to find a motivated seller, a motivated house user, not a seller. What's the difference between a house user and a seller?
A seller wants to sell, and a house user doesn't know that wants to sell.
Right. So a house seller wants to be shed of the house. A house user doesn't want to lose their house. They want to stay in it. So let's look at some possible motivations. How about deferred maintenance? Maybe it's time for a septic, or they're being forced by the city to hook up to the sewer. Maybe it has a blue tarp on the roof on top of the brown tarp on the roof on top of the green tarp on the roof, and it needs a new roof. Maybe they're getting harassed because they need to put desertscape into the yard and get rid of that water-wasting grass. Maybe the house is just plain ugly. Possibly you've got weather or earthquake damage. How about cash flow problems? A widow who just can't afford all the costs of living now that her Social Security has been cut down, and she lost the pension because the guy figured he was going to outlive her and chose the larger pension payment until he died instead of the pension for both of their lives. Retirees, family of people who failed to plan. They're writing a $300 check every month to their mother-in-law. A buyer of something else. Maybe they want to live above their means. Maybe school expenses or babysitters, or they need a better car, or they want a toy. I've done a lot of deals on toy wanters. So once you find a motivated seller, this is good for a short-term seller. Just inherit a house and lives away, but having trouble selling the house quickly. Can't sell the house without fixing. A vacant homeowner. So let's take a look at a long-term lease with an option. And I can do this from memory better. So let's talk about a gentleman who has a house, a building that he bought 30 plus years ago for $100,000. He's been running that building, doing a good job of it, he thinks, and that building is now worth $1 million because it makes $100,000 every year. And on a 10 cap, what does that tell us the building's worth? $100,000, $1 million. If he's to sell that house for $1 million, after he pays his closing cost, real estate commission, depreciation recapture, and all the other costs, your income tax, your rich bastard tax in California, and your state income tax, he's going to be lucky to put 60% of that $1 million in his pocket, right? And if his goal, since he's going to pare down his lifestyle a little bit because he's a retiree and all he's going to do is putter around in the garden, is to have a $50,000 a month. He's going to spend 50 grand a month from this asset. I think if you back up to 6 is where this example's in the book, actually, believe it or not. Sorry, this isn't better planned. So he sells, gets cash, has $600,000 in the bank. He's going to conservatively invest that, right? So he's going to get 3 or 4%. And if you put that in your calculator, you will find out that he will be at the front door of Walmart handing out shopping carts because he spent every bit of his money in just under 15 years. Now, this couple have been running this building for over 30 years. They're tired, they're burnt out, and they want to go on a round-the-world, year-long, $200,000 cruise. If they sell that building for cash and get net $600,000, can they spend $200,000 to go on that cruise? Can they? They're going to blow a third of their nest egg in 1 year. So now they're at the front door of Walmart in 8 years instead of 15. So they can't do it if they do that. Now, another solution. What if you, the energetic, excited operator, lease that building from them for 60% of what it's been making, or $60,000 a year? How long can they spend $50,000? A year? Forever. They never end up at the front door of Walmart because they've always got that $60,000 coming so they can spend 50. Questions? Stunned silence. That's never a good thing. So if we lease the building from them for $60,000 a year, they get their $50,000 forever till they go to heaven. Now, if he has a building that's worth $1 million, has a lease, a long-term lease at $60,000 a year, can he borrow $200,000 against that house? Easily. So now, can he afford to do that cruise? Yes. He's gonna have to service the loan, but it's not gonna take a third of his nest egg. So he can still take the cruise. Now, along with your lease, you're going to have an option that says, at some point in the future, you're gonna buy this building for 100% of its retail cost today. How much is that? $1 million. Now, you're going to work hard and build up the income on this building. And let's say, and you're going to have a gentleman's agreement because you can't put this in the contract that you won't exercise this till he's dead. So the gentleman's agreement says, we're not going to exercise our option until you go to heaven. So when he goes to heaven, instead of getting what's left of $600,000, if there's anything, his kids are going to get what? $1 million. And what's the tax consequences on that $1 million? Zero or less. If we've got the income on that building up to $200,000, at a 10 cap, what's the building worth? $2 million. So their basis in the building is $2 million. Yes?
How'd you do that math?
That's why I choose 10 cap. It's easy.
But for the people that don't understand what 10 cap is, how do you get that math?
So a cap rate is the number that you divide the value of a building by and find out how much the number is based on the income that the building makes. So for example, if the building's worth $1 million and it makes $100,000 and you want to buy it for $1 million, that's a 10 cap, because 100,000 is 10 times $1 million, or $1 million is 10 times 100,000.
So 100,000 is the yearly income.
Right.
Times 10 years.
Times
So
10
$1 million.
times 10
Times 10.
gives you $1 million for the value. Yes. So if it's making 200,000 on a 10 cap, it's worth $2 million. So when they expire and their basis is $2 million and they sell it for $1 million, what's the tax consequence?
I'm guessing there isn't. Yeah, repeat it one more time.
Okay. When they inherited the building, based on its income, the value of the building was $2 million. They sold it for $1 million. How much did they make in profit on that sale?
Well,
More than 100, Did they lost $1 million?
They lost $1 million.
yeah.
So instead of getting what's left of $600,000, they get $1 million cash, and they have $1 million in taxable passive income loss that they can use going forward to save money on their taxes. Any questions?
So it's a step up in basis, you guys.
Right. So when you die, there's a step up in basis. Yes.
Jargon and flag.
On what?
Not everyone knows what step up in basis is either.
So okay. So that's fine. You got to tell me which
I'm asking for the people that don't
which
know.
words
Yeah.
I'm confusing you with, you cowards out there. So basis is the value of an asset based on its acquisition cost, capital improvements you put into it, and depreciation that has reduced it. And that formula will tell you what the basis is on that structure. For example, he bought this building for $100,000 over 30 years ago. If he used an 80-20 distribution of building improvements to land, then the land there is worth how much? $20,000.
Okay.
So when he sells that for $1 million cash, he has to pay tax on $980,000 in profit. Yes. Now, if he dies first, then the basis goes from the acquisition cost plus capital improvements minus depreciation to the value at the time that you inherit. So within 9 months of inheriting, you have to, as part of probate, you need a estate appraisal of the assets. Questions?
Is it 9 months for both probate or a trust if you're inheriting it through trust?
Trusts don't probate, but if you want,
Not
you
saying
have
for
to do it either
Is
or.
the appraisal time 9 months for both?
Yes, for the estate appraisal for the basis. Yeah. And of course, I'm not an attorney. I don't even play one on TV. Anything to add?
So now I'll go ahead and add some possibilities where last year around this time, through the beginning of this year, I took various groups door knocking. Okay. And so when we went door knocking, we came across different properties where I would ask those members who came along with us to evaluate the property before we spoke to the owner or the tenant, and then assess what kind of property it was, and then think about, once we spoke to the person that lived there, what possibilities there could be. So Andy mentioned where you could see a tarp on a roof. And did we come across houses with tarps on the roof? Yes, we did. So what does that basically tell you? There's an opportunity to potentially put an option on the property. Again, what is that option? It's not a loan. You're basically providing funds that could be used at that point in time. You would secure that option with a mortgage or deed of trust on that property. So you're in the chain of title. So what happens at the time that this property owner may want to sell? Well, our option agreement that we determine at the time we provided the funds. So let's say there's a roof repaired that was needed. Indeed, we came up across a homeowner who needed a roof repair. That same property owner also needed a water main replacement and replumbing inside their house. So what kind of expenses are those? Probably somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000. Roof repair, probably higher, $8,000 to $20,000 maybe. So we could have taken options on these properties, determined what a sale price was, and then purchase at that sale price some years down the line. So the specific instance that we came across, we picked a random restaurant so basically when I organized the group, I had someone pick out which city they wanted to do this door knocking trip in. Then we picked out a random restaurant, and then we picked out a random street. On one particular trip, we came across a property owner who had 3 properties. One which needed the water main replacement, the other one that needed a roof replacement. The property owner did not want to sell any one of the properties. And we said, that's fine. You have 2 sons and you have 3 properties. If we were able to go ahead and get this done, we would have provided an option on each property, and we could have said, all right, your sons get the pick out of the 2 of the best 3 properties. And our option basically would then revert to the property that was least desirable to the heirs. So the father could live in the 3rd property until he passed. Then the sons could have their pick to the best 3 properties. And then we would purchase that 3rd property, exercising our option. Does everyone understand how that works? Got it? So that's one example we came across just with the door knocking. Now, we were not able to get that option in place. We still will follow up on it, but that's an example of where we try to apply it. Yes?
How would you use the financial calculator to calculate the cost of it? How much the option's worth and how much you should?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
How would you use a financial calculator to analyze that?
Well, so the question is, how would you use a financial calculator to analyze the return on an option? You have to sort of, the way you would use the tool of the financial calculator would be projecting the growth on the value of the asset. So let's say it's a standard single-family residence. Those typically increase in value about 6% a year. Over the long haul, 20 to 40 years, you'll find it averages out right about 6%. So you might take the current value, plug in 6%, and that would give you an estimate of the value at some point in the future. Typically, though, the options that we acquire are going to be for an amount that is lower than, depending on the deal we structure, it could be substantially lower than the current value. It could be half of the current value, but we're being postponed for quite a while. The example in the book for the deferred maintenance that's on the screen up here is Mabel, who's a widow. She has 2 daughters. They're 12 and 15. They live in a nice 3-2 home. It's in your farm. It'll make a nice rental home when she no longer needs it. She's got a problem. The Landers earthquake fractured the slab of her home, and unbeknownst to her, it caused a leak under the slab, and now after all these years, the water has caused the house to shift too much to ignore. Of course, she has had no earthquake insurance, and her homeowners won't cover it. She's had a general contractor who specializes in raising slab homes and correcting this type of situation. She had the funds to repair the leak in the water line, but doesn't have the money to re-level the house and stop the sliding. Due to her finances, she was unable to borrow the funds to have this repair done. And even though the contractor is willing to finance this repair for her, she can't afford his payments on her widow's pension. She desperately needs to raise $12,000 to fix her house. Until the repairs are made, the house is unsellable, and besides, she really wants her girls to stay at their current schools until the younger girl graduates high school in 6 years. How can we help Mabel?
Option.
So let's consider an option technique as a solution. We're going to get the house appraised at its repaired value. Then we're going to subtract the balance of the home loan, and that remaining balance is your option price. Okay, I got to stand in the camera. Assume the house has a value of 200, loan current balance of 100, so your net equity is $100,000, correct? Negotiate that you will pay the repair for home in exchange for an option to buy the house anytime between 6 years from now and 36 years from now for $100,000, taking care of the remaining balance on the loan. Execute an option and record a deed of trust, but somewhere on the deed of trust you can type on the face of the deed of trust where you normally put the description. You're going to add the sentence everywhere on this document where the term note is used, substitute the term option. It fits well in the legal description. Negotiate with the contractor, and maybe he wants that motorhome you took for a down payment. So let's divide up the benefits from Peter's benefit house. The widow gets use for the wanted term. She gets security. The home is still in her name. She gets the tax benefits of ownership, and she's got a fixed house. The optionee, you get growth, amortization, security with the deed of trust, and you get a fixed house when her kids get out of high school. Any questions about that simple structure?
Can she change her mind? Like,
No.
she can't have buyer's remorse later and go, wait.
No. Something that I do, which is important, and it's going to save my bacon, I think, maybe. When I exercise an option with somebody at the kitchen table, I take out my cell phone and I make the person that's selling me the option tell me the deal. They state for the record exactly what our deal is, that I am buying the unilateral right to buy that house. I want them to say it in their own words. Yes?
So you're going back, when you record the option, but you can't put on the death of the person, can't you just put that into a life estate?
You could, but then it would be a life estate, and we're going to talk about a transfer on death deed in a minute, and the life estate doesn't get you the step up in basis. Yes?
How do you stop the current owner from putting more debt on the property and getting the equity out?
Well, if they put more debt that's secondary and third below my recorded option, and I foreclose to enforce my option, that deals with those.
So let's kind of recap that again. So what's the difference between an option and a loan? Loan, you're making payments at some interval. Loan has to be paid back. Does an option have to be paid back?
I want to come this way too. She's parking around us corners.
So the option does not have to be paid back. It's exercised, or it could expire. You choose not to exercise the option after all.
So, maybe I missed it somewhere. How is your option at the first position, or not the option? How is your amortization at first position if they have that $100,000
So
loan on it still?
So many people think all you need to do is just get an option signed, and then that's pretty much it. And at the time you want to exercise it, you present it and you exercise it at that point in time. But if it's not in the chain of title, what's going to happen? Okay, that house could get sold. No one sees that option is in the chain of title. It's as if it never existed, because according to the chain of title, it never did.
So when Peter learned that recording a memorandum of option is not efficient was when he was driving around Orlando, and he decided to get off of the freeway at an intersection and go look at the acreage that he had an option on. And when he got there, he found a hotel. Because they had just completely ignored his option on that land and sold it, and somebody built a hotel there. Question?
Yeah, I missed the part where he asked if the owner, okay, you have the option, but you have the option to buy that property at $100,000 somewhere between 6 and 30 years. What if they go out and they take out like a second?
Okay, so you're sitting next to a lender. Ask him if they would do a title search before they did a major second, and if they found a deed of trust out there that said there was an option, that said all the value above the first is mine for $100,000, are they going to lend on that, or are they going to call me?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, to follow up on someone else's question, when they were asking, oh, it was true. So if someone changed their mind, could they buy you out?
So frequently I have people ask me the question, you know, what if I decide I get the money and I can pay you back? I point out the fact that Dodd-Frank has made that illegal. I cannot lend money to somebody who lives in the house that's the collateral for the loan.
I mean, could they buy the option back?
But what I tell them is that since I can't loan, I can only buy something that they're selling me, and they are selling me the unilateral right to buy their house according to the terms on the option agreement. And I don't use option agreement when I'm negotiating with civilians. Top of my contract says a right to purchase agreement. But what I do tell them is I would certainly entertain an offer to sell this back to you. I can't set a price. That would make this an illegal loan.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as I can make an obscene profit, I will happily sell you back your option. And everybody chuckles, but me. So for an obscene profit, I will certainly sell an option back. Yes?
You didn't loan her money, but did you just give her funds for the repairs, or did you give her a part of the equity?
So I gave her option consideration. That would be something that applies. So let's use the structure we just did. So we have to get $12,000 to level the slab.
Okay.
And we have an option that says that for $100,000 taking care of, didn't say paying off, said taking care of the first, I can buy this house sometime 6 to 36 years from today. And the $12,000 is part of the $100,000. So sometime 6 to 36 years from now, I have to hand her $88,000 and exercise my option, and I buy that house subject to the existing first, which I will take care of, which means I'm going to make the payments on it. Now, because the $12,000 applies to the purchase price, that is option consideration, so it's not taxable income. So she gets to keep the whole $12,000. Mechanically, I would probably end up making sure that the contractor got paid and the repairs got made. However, I had to do that. Fernando.
I think it's worth mentioning something that I thought was genius. What happens if the option that I have to purchase this home and the owner who's living in the home is not keeping up with the maintenance, so it's kind of devaluing the property?
So typically in my option agreements, it says I have the right to inspect. And if I find the house in poor condition, or if I find they're not keeping their homeowner insurance or paying their property tax, I have the right to advance that money. Not the responsibility, I don't have to. But if I do advance that money, I'm credited 3 times the amount I advanced to solve the problem. So I send them, if I notice it needs let's say it needs roof, and I drive by and say, you got to get that roof fixed. It's shot. You need to raise the money and take care of it. And they say, well, I just can't do it. Then I'm going to hire somebody to fix the roof. I'm going to pay for it, and I will get 3 times that money that I spent applied to that $88,000 I still owe.
The strike price.
Right. Ricardo.
That's legal?
Yes. Sure, it's in the contract.
If the option takes a long time, you probably end up with a free house. In
Well,
36 years.
we'll talk about how to get the free house. That's the exciting thing. Right.
What did Pete do wrong? If you can explain
He recorded a memorandum of option, which was the old school thing you did when you did an option agreement. You recorded a document called a memorandum of option. What we do now, what's an improvement over those days, is we record a deed of trust. And because I suck at paperwork, I record Exhibit A as the legal description, and Exhibit B is the option.